NASA, the agency that put man on the moon. It was the 1960s. The Cold War was on. The space race was a national obsession. Because this was more than science, it was symbolism. Global power measured in rocket fuel and national pride tethered to every countdown. So when Alan Shepard became the first American in space, America cheered. And when John Glenn orbited the Earth, headlines hailed a new frontier. And when Neil Armstrong took that giant leap for mankind in 1969, the world stopped to watch. But actually, those heroes wouldn't have even been able to launch without a mathematician named Katherine Johnson. Katherine Johnson's hand-calculated trajectories didn't just send astronauts into orbit and to the moon, they brought them home safely. No American had been able to figure out the math to make this happen before. A mathematical genius, the best at what she did. Today, Katherine Johnson is revered as a NASA trailblazer. But she wasn't always celebrated in this way. As a black woman living in the Jim Crow South, she had to overcome countless barriers of race and gender. It took nearly 50 years for her contributions to be recognized. This is a story of the woman whose brilliant mind actually got the United States into space. Let's rewind. Katherine Johnson was born in 1918 in West Virginia. As a child, she counted everything. Stairs, dishes, stars in the sky. For Katherine, math was more than a subject. It was her first language. She loved it, and her skill was apparent from a young age. She started high school when she was 10 years old. By 15, college. By 18, she graduated summa cum laude with degrees in math and French. But brilliance alone didn't open doors. After all, this was the Jim Crow South. Her mathematical genius unfolded against a backdrop of segregated schools, voter suppression, and whites-only signs that turned the simplest acts of daily life into battles for dignity. Job options for black women were limited, confined to roles like domestic help or teaching in segregated schools. So, like many women of her era, she became a school teacher. Until one day in 1952, Katherine heard about a job opening for a human computer at a government aeronautics lab. You might be wondering, human computer? Before electronic computers were a thing, people, almost always women, had to do all types of calculations by hand. Katherine famously called it a time when computers wore skirts. These human computers fueled advances from astronomy to the atomic bomb, solving equations and plotting trajectories in labs, observatories, and war rooms. The organization that predated NASA had been hiring white women for human-computer work since the 1930s. During World War II, they started hiring black women too, as long as they had college degrees and were willing to work in segregated rooms. Katherine got the job in 1953. At the time, computing was essentially secretarial work, even though at NASA they required advanced math and a college degree. 2 weeks in, Katherine was borrowed for a temporary assignment by the Flight Research Division, the elite, all-male team who calculated space flight paths and solved the complicated equations. But once Katherine got into the room, it was clear she would become a permanent member of the team. She became the Flight Research Division's go-to mind, tackling challenges the all-male team had struggled with for years. Fast forward to the late 1950s, the geopolitical chess match of the Cold War had taken to the skies. The Soviets stunned the world by launching the first human into space. America was scrambling to catch up. Then, in 1962, President John F. Kennedy threw down the gauntlet, declaring that the U.S. would not just send a man into space, but land him on the moon before the decade was done.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
More than just a race for the stars, a high-stakes battle for global prestige, fueled by technology, politics, and sheer nerve. And behind it all was math. The type of math Katherine Johnson had mastered. In 1961, NASA needed someone to calculate the exact arc that the rocket should follow to get into orbit and then get home without crashing into the ocean or missing Earth entirely. Cue Katherine Johnson. Her calculations, done with little more than a pencil, a slide rule, and graph paper, helped launch Alan Shepard into space, making him the first American in orbit. But the real test came with John Glenn's flight. He was set to be the first American to orbit Earth. When NASA's new IBM computers churned out trajectory data, Glenn wasn't convinced the numbers were right. So he asked for the girl, Katherine, to check it by hand. He refused to launch until she personally verified the math. Then, in 1969, her work helped send Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins to the moon and back. You'd think the person who literally mapped the moon landing would be a household name. Yet when she retired in 1986, no major awards, no public credit. For decades, Katherine's story and the stories of her Black female colleagues were buried deep in NASA archives. It wasn't until Hidden Figures was published in 2016 that her name would finally reach the world. Also a great film, a box office hit. Cue the accolades. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, NASA's Silver Snoopy and the Group Achievement Awards, the Congressional Gold Medal, and NASA named 3 facilities in her honor. But by that time, many of her colleagues, including the other hidden figures, the women who calculated and coded alongside her, were gone. Recognition came too late for so many. Katherine passed away in 2020 at the age of 101. The following year, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. For decades, we celebrated the men in the rockets and forgot the women who charted their way. So next time someone says the space race was won by astronauts, remind them it was powered by math. And in a world where people were barred from libraries and lunch counters because of the color of their skin, Katherine Johnson's excellence in math went beyond her calculations. It was a quiet act of resistance, a declaration that brilliance knows no color. Her mind broke barriers before rockets ever did. Thank you, Katherine. Your achievements changed the world. Your legacy will forever guide us forward and remind us that shooting for the stars might not be out of reach. Here at Actually History, we're seeing history through a new lens and giving credit where it's actually due. Most of our stories are based on this book, and she co-wrote it. This is, to her credit, Historic Achievements and the Women Who Actually Made Them Happen by Caitlin Colmo and Emily McDermott. We kindly ask, if you're interested in our mission, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. More stories to come. Class is in session.